to item number 1, which is our consent agenda.
I move approval of the consent agenda as written.
Second.
Okay. I'll give it to Gina, Maureen, this time.
Got it.
Okay, we have a motion by Brandy and a second by Gina to approve the consent agenda as is. I'll start the roll with Art.
Aye.
Ann?
Aye.
Gina?
Aye.
Sandra?
Aye.
Maureen?
Aye.
And Randy.
Aye.
Okay. With that, we'll move on to item number 2, staff recognition report. Gary, do you have anything for us tonight?
Nothing, sir. Tonight.
Okay. With that, we will go to mayor's appointments, and I have none this evening. So that will lead us into our public comment period, which we allow 15 minutes for folks to discuss things with us, as long as it's not on this evening's agenda or something in front of our planning and zoning department and or our board of adjustment. So if you want to come up, we'll give you 3 minutes, and please state your name and what's on your mind. And if you do that also, when you're done, we got some Clorox wipes. Please wipe off the knob or the microphone, as well as we got hand sanitizer for you as well. Okay, well, we'll move on to item number 5 then, Gary. MPD body worn camera proposal. Gary Reedner, you have the podium, sir.
Thank you, Your Honor. What we have tonight is the harbinger was stated by a couple of people who testified during the public hearing on the FY21 budget last week, or 2 weeks ago, asking that the council include funding for police body-worn cameras in the FY21 budget. At that time, we reported that pursuant to a request from the chief of police to revisit that discussion, we intended to bring it to Public Works Finance Committee last week, which we did. It was presented there, and it is now before you tonight. There is a memo in your packet where we talk about the different factors in looking at body-worn cameras. This is something that has been discussed at various times for many years in the city of Moscow. As you know, we implemented a community policing model back in the mid-1990s, which has worked very well for the city of Moscow. We've seen an increase in civil interactions between our officers and the community, and the focus is on education rather than enforcement. Enforcement, of course, being the last in a continuum of compliance utilized by our police department. However, with the recent happenings across the nation regarding police forces and interaction with the police, the discussion of body-worn cameras has again come up. At the chief's request, we've started to look at it again, and we've determined, if you look at the memo, there are several factors that we should be considered, and the purposes, number 1, for which you wish to deploy body-worn cameras. One is for accountability, not only of law enforcement, but of anyone having contact with law enforcement. There's no better evidence than actual footage of the encounter, so that is one thing. Secondly, an additional level of transparency, which was particularly important to the chief of police, that the interactions that his officers have with the community are easily reviewed, that the officers' contacts are transparent, and that's open for anyone to take a look at. Lastly, and this is an enforcement issue, that additional footage can serve as evidence of that can be utilized in enforcement actions. So those are the 3 major concerns. Financial impacts. Financially, body-worn cameras cost less than they have in the remote past. They're about $2,000 a piece. We propose funding them if the council wishes to move ahead. We can fund the proposal out of accumulations in the information systems budget, and we will then reprioritize purchases of other information systems equipment down the road. The cost of the deployment of the cameras themselves, we have 30 cameras that will be deployed. It will take an additional 2 cameras. These cameras are not repairable. They have a 3-year warranty, and when one is broken, typically it is merely replaced. So we have a obsolescence schedule that matches that 3 years. The cost of the cameras is not the only cost associated with body-worn cameras. There's additional training that the officers will have to pursue. In addition, the storage of the camera's footage costs more. You don't just put that on another hard drive. It takes a lot of additional storage space to store that footage. In addition, there is a public records aspect and an evidence aspect regarding body-worn camera footage. Those records need to be curated, meaning that they need to be managed. When you have a encounter where images on the body camera are of a minor or of someone whose identity is to be protected, such as a victim of sexual abuse perhaps, that image has to be redacted from the public records request on body-worn camera footage. So it will take someone to have to go through, and when those requests come, they'll have to go through that footage and make sure that those privacy interests are served. The cameras that we are looking at are a WatchGuard product. WatchGuard is the vendor of the vehicle cameras that we utilize at this time and have been very good since we've had them. They have the additional advantage that they are downloaded whenever they are parked in front of the police station. These cameras would download automatically as well. They also, some of the software that comes with the cameras also has face recognition software that will assist us in making those redactions that I mentioned previously. So we believe that we have a good product, and see, make sure I get this. And we've looked at the costs of these going forward, the cost of what it will take to move forward with this at this time. We believe that in the FY21 budget, it'll cost approximately $130,000. That includes the initial purchase of the camera. It also includes the first year of the obsolescence program, the additional storage, and the additional personnel, or hours, if you will, to curate those electronic records. And after that, we believe it will cost somewhere between $140,000 and $150,000 to maintain that. Of course, we will also have the continuing cost of the storage, and that's something that the information systems people are working on, whether we purchase our own servers in order to store that data, or whether we contract out to cloud storage. Additionally, we will look at replacement, as I indicated, every 3 years of each camera, and we will have to continue to pay the personnel in order to curate those records. So with that, we can move ahead with this at the council's discretion. We have the accumulations in order to immediately place an order and purchase the cameras, and we can get those deployed as quickly as the city attorney's office can develop the policies and procedures that will need to be implemented by the police in those utilizing those cameras. I've been in contact with some of my contemporaries in other city managers' offices, and we have several different draft policies that we will utilize in developing a policy for the city of Moscow. The good thing is a lot of these draft policies were drafted pursuant to grants that other departments have used to purchase some body cameras, and those have been approved. Those policies in those other jurisdictions have been approved by the Department of Justice, so it's a good basis to start from. So with that, I'd answer any questions you might have. Chief Fry is here as well, There's a memo in the packet regarding the police department's position on body-worn cameras, and either of us can answer questions as you wish.
Gary, you were talking about other jurisdictions. Are you talking about jurisdictions in the state of Idaho?
Yes, Twin Falls specifically.
Okay, all right,
In fact, I just received that packet today and forwarded it on to the city attorney.
okay. Maureen?
The one question I have that jumps out at me is a question of this, in 2021, we have $130,000, and that's coming from the IT department. My question is that, does that mean that that's not ongoing money that the IT department has to dedicate to that? So in subsequent budget hearings, we're going to have to come up, the police department's going to have to build $140,000 into their budget.
Yes. Had this been a possibility as we were developing the FY21 budget, or it had been in the council's strategic plan, we would have developed it and put it in the FY21 budget. What will happen is the purchase of the equipment itself, the storage and that sort of thing will be funded out of the information systems accumulation. The staff, as I indicated to Public Works Finance Committee, there is no way for us to determine exactly how much staff will be taken. We have some capacity to take part-time people and pay them full-time in order to curate these records. That's something that we won't know until we start to do it. We will attempt to do it with existing staff. However, what will happen is we will budget into the future. If the council approves this tonight, then we will build in the FY22 budget request the amount of money it will take to maintain the program.
Right, so from now on, we have to build in $140,000 into each subsequent budget.
And it's one of those things we don't like to bring forward very often in a situation like this where there appears to be a desire to move forward. We can certainly accommodate that. But what we in fact are doing is saying, okay, well, we're taking an amount of next year's proposal or proposed budget, and we're tying it up with this program. So, and it's been done in the past. We don't like doing it, as I indicated, very often, but we do have the capacity to do that.
Okay, other questions for Gary? Brandy?
Yeah,
Yeah, something you want to?
it was kind of following up on the mayor's question. So Twin Falls, are there other regional or area cities, either Idaho, Washington, that you're aware of that are using the body-worn cameras?
I'm certain there are. I know
Yeah,
that
okay.
City of Pullman has deployed them. I think City of Spokane, Lewiston. So yeah, there are other
Okay.
jurisdictions that have them.
Looks like maybe
And
Chief
just so you
Brackens-
know, I contacted some of my contacts from when I was at the National Academy, and they've sent me sample ones. I also went to the International Association of Chiefs of Police. They have a 16-page document on body-worn cameras that has been used across the nation and the world. So we're also looking at that to try to gain the most knowledge we can on what's going to fit our department and fit our community.
Well, the good news about that is we don't have to reinvent the wheel because there's other jurisdictions that do that, so it's not a problem for us to kind of copycat and find from them, learn from them without just having to stick our toe in the bathwater to see how hot it is. Jeannie, you had a,
For all the reasons that we spoke of in our Public Works and Finance Committee meeting, I think this is an uptick in accountability. I think it's an uptick in safety as well. And I caught something in your memo tonight that you'd have had me at the very first time you mentioned it, if you'd have said this. It's also a good training tool, can be used as a training tool when training in the field operations, and that's huge. That's huge. So, I guess I would like to hear, we had a citizen write in about kind of an invasion of privacy concern, and I wanted to hear what both of you thought about that. Other than that question, I think I'm very much in support of this, but I'd like to hear the answer to how do you address what someone would see as an invasion of their personal privacy?
The chief can speak to the actual on the street. I can tell you from the aspect of a contact, if you call the police, then you're expecting to be contacted by the police. And if you're stopped by the police, it's just gathering more evidence. There is no privilege to that. Again, I've indicated we have to protect privacy in accordance with the laws of evidence and public records. But, Moscow is, I remember there was a discussion several years ago about, we were seeing our public bathrooms being vandalized and burned, and it was, I can't recall exactly how that was resolved, if they found the perpetrators or not. But one of the things that had been discussed was to put cameras so that you could actually keep those under surveillance. And there were some folks that didn't want to do that because of a supposed invasion of privacy. It's not an invasion of privacy. You're on a public street or in a public park. It's not an invasion of privacy as much as a preference not to have a recording.
Maybe it's a misunderstanding of when the cameras are used, actually, too, when they're turned on and when they're turned off. It's not like they're gonna wander around downtown with their cameras on, right? I mean, maybe we need to understand the use of them as well. Please.
The cameras are going to be used when we're responding to calls. We have a list of, that will be in the policy of what types of calls that officers will have those on traffic stops per se. They're a high risk, even though they're routine, they're still a high risk situation for officers, domestics and different calls like that is when those cameras will be utilized. And sometimes things happen very rapidly. And, they transform from being a calm situation to a very violent situation. So we'll try to get them on after it transforms into that if we can, so long as officers can do that safely.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Randy?
Just as a follow-up to that same citizen concern, one of the things that she mentioned was she's wondering if some people might hesitate to call you in the first place because of some type of concern or fear about being on videotape and people being able to access that. So I think she was wondering, do you think that people might then be in a situation where, because of the fact that there's cameras, they're hesitant to call for some reason? Have you heard anything of that in places that implement
I haven't
them?
seen any evidence based across the nation with that. People need to realize with cell phones these days, everybody's being recorded at all times. Our officers are being recorded constantly by people with cell phones, and I haven't seen that. But part of that'll be our, talking with the community members, educating them on why we use the cameras, that we are trying to be more transparent, and for the community and for us. So that'll be one of our education pieces as well.
Okay, well, we got some folks from the public here. Is there anybody from the public? Would you like to come up and speak about this with us? I'll give us your name and we'll give you 3 minutes if you want to say what you think about body cameras for MPD. Oh, we got an easy crowd tonight, so thank you very much. Okay, Ann and Art, did you guys have anything you wanted to add to this? Art?
Yeah, I jump in. This is one issue where it seems both the police and the public are pretty much well aligned in the need and desire to have body cams out there. The only point that hangs me up a little bit is the ongoing cost, especially in personnel moving forward, where we're going to have to make some more budget decisions on top of the ones we've already made in order to carry this program forward. And it would be silly to embark upon it and not to carry it forward. But there's going to have to be some heavy thinking as we move forward in the budget year and the need for personnel becomes increasingly evident. So by and large, I'm for it, but I still have nagging issues about the cost for personnel and the cost to the city moving forward. But like I say, by and large, I am in favor of this one.
Thank you, Art. Ann?
I agree. And I think even considering the cost, I think this is a great addition to our community policing efforts. And I really appreciate the chief and the force for being open to it and it being something that seems like it is sort of unanimously, I shouldn't say unanimously, but wanted by both the public and in the city. And so I think it's great. And again, even considering the cost and some of the challenges that we're facing in our next budget year.
Gina?
Do you want to hear from Maureen? Were you aiming in that direction?
Oh, well, I don't know unless
You go
we-
Gina first.
Okay, well, I was going to make a motion.
Okay, let me just say one thing.
Please do.
Go ahead.
I will say that at the city council meeting, when 2 participants came up and spoke about the body cameras, I felt so proud of our police department when that happened, when the answer to Gary said is, it's coming up next week, and that you were already on top of it and moving on it. And it wasn't like you had to do it, but it was kind of an affirmation for what the police were doing, and I think that was really great. I asked the question about the finances, because someone had raised that issue, but I do think it's an expensive proposition, storing that, but I do think that it is something that we will all benefit from.
I just wanted to say
Yes,
I completely
Gary.
agree, and I thought that was a fantastic moment as well.
Yeah, we have taken a look at our personnel. As you know, we map out a year in advance where we think we're going to be, and as we're developing budgets and council approves budgets, we look at those things that weren't funded and how, if they're still viable, how we're going to move ahead. So we're working upstairs to try and determine if there are some other positions that we might be able to, some other things, combine some positions, those sorts of things, in order to mitigate the impact of this. Not saying we can do it all, but we certainly can explore it as best we can.
Gina?
Having heard all of these positive statements, and I know I have not yet lived through a budget discussion with you, Mr. Reedner, as a department head, but from what I understand, you're diligent in your efforts, and I have no doubt that we will figure out the funding, like we always do. I move that we approve the purchase and deployment of body-worn cameras by officers of the Moscow Police Department, including approval of the funding proposal as included in the memo from the city supervisor.
Second.
Okay. We have a motion by Gina and a second by Ann to approve the purchase and deployment of body-worn cameras by officers of the Moscow Police Department, including approval of the funding proposal, all as included in the memo from City Supervisor Gary Reedner. Any discussion before I call for a roll? Okay, I'll start. Art,
Aye.
Ann,
Aye.
Maureen,
Aye.
Brandy,
Aye.
Sandra,
Aye.
and Gina.
Aye.
Okay, we will move forward with that. Thank you very much. We will move on to item number 6, and that is approval of the FY 2021 Amended Appropriations Ordinance and the revised 2021 L2 Property Tax Certification. Carrie?
Thank you, Your Honor. A little bit of deja vu as we talk about the public hearing for the FY21 budget, which took place in these chambers 2 weeks ago. The council at that time passed an appropriation ordinance after considering the budget, listening to public comments, and also approved the mayor's signature on the L2 property tax certification, which we must file with Latah County in order to levy property taxes. As I indicated at that time, we were moving ahead. Staff's recommendation was to approve the ordinance, hold the public hearing, approve the ordinance, and approve the L2, in that we had it, if something needed to be amended, we could move forward as necessary. As we indicated, the governor passed the Public Safety Grant Initiative, Governor's Public Safety Grant Initiative, GPSGI, and that is a property tax replacement fund or public safety personnel reimbursement initiative, which was proposed by the governor in early May. That initiative takes CARES Act funding and, according to a formula based on population, will provide property tax replacement funding. In other words, we would submit a letter of intent, which we did in early July, which indicated that the amount of funding that we had, or public safety personnel costs, and a letter of intent, a non-binding letter of intent, stating that the city wished to move ahead with participating in that program. We were then given a letter in very early August, or excuse me, late July, indicating that based upon the requests made by other jurisdictions in the state of Idaho, that about 42% of our request would be eligible for that funding. So that amount came to $1,646,816. The next step was that once the council moved ahead with it and authorized it, that we could participate in the program. What would happen from a logistical standpoint is we would then build it into our budget. The State Tax Commission would send us a modified L2 tax certification form, which would then allow us to move forward. And according to a formula, the amount of funding that we received from the GPSGI then could be utilized for property tax reduction for fiscal year 21. It is a fairly, the application's a little bit complex. And as I indicated in my presentation when council initially authorized moving forward with the letter of intent, there are some questions that the CARES Act funding, according to Treasury regulations, is not to be used for revenue replacement. So a question has arisen whether this public safety personnel reimbursement proposal actually replaces funding and therefore would not be in conformance with the CARES Act. As I reported at that time, we were engaging the Association of Idaho Cities, the Governor's Office, the Attorney General's Office, and numerous prosecutors' offices, as well as city attorney and city managers, to try and determine what the validity of the initiative was. Since that time, the governor issued an executive order last week indicating that his office had been in contact with senior White House staff as well as Treasury staff, and they were assured that the program was valid. Now, I will note that there has not been anything in writing issued from the federal government. However, again, in the governor's executive order, that assertion is made. So we have calculated up the amount of money, and without getting too technical, essentially the $1,646,816 also has a 3% administrative expense attached to it. So 3% of that, or an amount of $49,404, will be, the city will increase its funding by that amount in order to cover the administrative costs of this. And because urban renewal agencies actually get their tax increment due to a calculation of the levy of property taxes levied by the city of Moscow, Latah County, et cetera, that amount of money will have to be taken from that amount and paid to the urban renewal agency. Typically, urban renewal agencies get their funding directly from Latah County. They receive a check for that. In this case, because it's property tax replacement funding. So once this modified L2 is filed, then in November, the city will receive a check from the state for an amount of money that includes the amount of money that we have to pay to the urban renewal agency. That amount of money we just found out today is $54,022. So because it is a function of the city's levy that goes into that increment, the share that the URA would get of that amount is that $54,022. So what we will have to do is actually write a check to the urban renewal agency for that amount, when that is usually paid through taxes up at the county. So with that.
Gary?
Yes, ma'am.
Sorry, so, but that's just the portion of the increment, correct?
Yes.
That would be replaced from this, okay.
Yes, it's the amount that is proportionate to the amount of the property tax replacement fund.
Got it. Okay.
And if you look over on page 3 of the revised ordinance, you can see that after you take the amount of money from The original amount that was approved in the previous appropriation ordinance, which was $7,276,525, and that includes $1,046,400 for the general obligation bond for the city buildings, including the police station. That number will now be $5,733,135. So the difference will be paid back to the city from the state. I've also included the revised L2 and the L2 worksheet for council's edification. And as you can see from looking at those documents, that the amount of the Public Safety Initiative funding was $1,646,816. The revenue for the 3% administrative cost is $49,404. And the Urban Renewal Agency allocation, $54,022. So with that, again, what is in shorthand version of what is going on is that to participate in this program, and the program will reimburse the city for funding that is used for public safety salaries. And what the proposition is we will receive that funding, and in order to receive it, then the council needs to reduce property taxes in a commensurate amount. The amended appropriation ordinance you have before you implements that proposition, and the L2 is reflective of taking that to the county and authorizing the mayor's signature on that. I will advise you that the last day to take the L2 to Latah County is September 10th. We do have one council meeting left on September 8th. We did not want to wait till 2 days before we have to get the L2 to the county in order to do this. However, it would be my proposal that we do not take the L2 to Latah County until as close to that time as we can. It'll have been approved by the council in case there is something that comes up that would require us to do something different. So we want to remain flexible to the last possible moment while having our ducks lined up in order to take advantage of the program.
Okay, so that brings up a question. We got two actions, and that one is to approve the amended appropriations ordinance, and the other one is to approve this revised 2021 L2 property tax certification. So with that being said, if that's approved tonight, what you're saying is you want to wait to give it to Latah County until right prior to,
Yes.
in case there's an adjustment? Is that what you said?
Yeah, and if there is, we
Then
will.
you'll have to bring it back.
We will come back to you on the 8th. And the only reason we're doing that, as I indicated, there are, I can tell you that there are a couple of cities in Idaho that are not taking advantage of this program. There are several counties that are not taking advantage of this program, whether it's legal advice or if they have decided that they're going to increase their taxes by the allowable 3%, then you can't participate in this program. So there's various reasons to do it, but I think the wise decision is to authorize to move ahead and then wait until we're sure that the program is viable and then take it up to Latah County.
Well, if there's ever a time we give our taxpayers a break, it's this year. Gina?
I must be having a dull moment, or maybe I was zoned out when you answered this question, but there was a concern that about the property tax reduction this year and then going back to normal, having it look like there's this awfully big jump.
Yep.
How did you answer that?
Well, I haven't answered it because it is a public relations issue rather than a legal issue. This will provide some reduction in property taxes, and give me just half a second here. Go to my desk.
Okay.
as we indicated that in the original worksheet, the original budget that the council passed, it was $5.01 was going to be the tax levy per thousand, and that will go to $3.95. So that will be the adjustment for fiscal year '21. However, that is a one-year adjustment. And consider that there was no 3% allowable property tax increase taken as a result. So
Yeah.
next year, the levy will return to whatever the amount would have been without the payment, the original levy this year. That will be what we start off with next year. We've been assured that through the State Tax Commission and by Idaho law Idaho law is that we can levy 3% on the highest of previous 3 years' tax levies. So next year, taxpayers will see their levies come back up to previous levels, and then whatever tax increases that this council authorizes at that time. So a reduction this year, next year it returns to normal.
I agree with your statement, Mr. Mayor, about this being the year to give people a property tax break. But we're not sure that COVID's going to be gone next year. And instead of a property tax reduction, then it's a bump back up. So I feel like we're putting everybody on a little bit of a roller coaster.
And again, I think some cities have decided that they don't wish to do that.
Yeah.
However, the direction from the council was to move forward, and that's why we're doing it. I can't say what will happen next year. This program through the state was a $200 million program for cities and counties. I can't say what will happen next year.
Brandy?
Yeah, I would say, I mean, the alternative is that we say, well, we won't take this and pass along the tax savings because we don't want people to then expect that moving forward and be disappointed when it doesn't happen. But if we can do it for 1 year, I think it's kind of incumbent upon us to, help people to understand that it was a choice of, do we take this for them or not? And yes, it does mean the next year things will go back to the regular levels, but in the meantime, they had 1 year of this reduction. So, I think that's going to probably take some ongoing explanation and maybe some cities think it's not worth that the misunderstanding of now you're raising our taxes, but I think if we can do a good enough job to say, well, we took advantage of this when we could, but it's a one-time deal.
Yeah.
I think the other part of that is we've been looking at ways to help people out. And this is one that the state has given us to allow us to help people out. And I do think that it would be, from my perspective, wise to accept it.
Gina?
Did it affect the urban renewal in any way?
No, this is neutral.
Okay.
One thing that we are allowed to increase taxes by, and it doesn't affect the overall taxpayer, and that is new construction. So new construction numbers around $50,000, if I recall correctly.
Yeah.
But that's property value or new improvements that didn't exist last year, so they weren't taxed, so they are entering the tax roll. But otherwise, yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Sandra, do you have?
I agree that I think this is a nice opportunity to give some people just a little tiny bit of a break. And while it might look like a giant increase next year, it has been a roller coaster. We're going to continue to be on a roller coaster. Let's take a little relief while we can until it gets that upswing again. So I'm for this. I'm glad we have the opportunity to provide just a little something, and I hope that we can remind people why we did it, that was a good thing, and that we're sorry that they increase when we go back the next year.
Art? How about a comment?
Yeah, I'm not necessarily oozing confidence about this whole legality issue and whether or not it's actually a pass-through. So I'm quite in favor of holding off on the actual handing over of the paperwork to the county until the very last possible moment, just to see where the legal determinants fall out. I'm assuming that if it does prove to be legally not feasible, that we'll still have the L2 that we discussed 2 weeks ago that we can put in place of this one and still go forward. But that being said, with my lack of confidence, I'd still be in favor of this, just to provide some tax relief to people here in Moscow when we can, with the understanding that this is a one-off and things are going to hop back up again at the end of this program, and people really need to understand this, that it's not going to be an ongoing benefit to them.
Ann? Let's have you weigh in, Ann.
Yeah, I'm just thinking through the best ways to possibly communicate this to taxpayers. And I'm just thinking through what that would look like, because most of the communication they receive comes from the county, correct?
Yes, regarding taxes. We've already talked about some sort of outreach that explains what's going on, what will happen in the future, and what the taxpayers can expect.
Okay. I mean, I'm in support of it. I think it's just an opportunity for us to, try to proactively communicate why they're seeing that benefit this year. But I don't see any downside other than the possibility of needing to do more of that legwork to help bridge the gap for anyone who's confused by what's happening.
I will say that in speaking with, again, AIC, my contemporaries, government attorneys, that there is some question, no doubt about it. However, overall, people indicate that they will likely take advantage of it. It's one of those things, it is a bit of a seesaw. If it turns out that at the last moment, a court declares that it's invalid, or the federal government comes out and says, no, absolutely, this program won't work, then what will happen, Art, is we will ask the mayor to call an emergency council meeting. If we can't do it on the 8th, we will go back and ask for reauthorization of the original appropriation ordinance and the original L2. But again, we're trying to get all bases covered. We know now what each one will do, and we're assuming that the program is valid as authorized by the governor. And if we need to change in midstream, we'll keep the council apprised and get back in front of you.
Okay. Brandy?
If it is determined that there's something that is not valid about this, can we still accept the public safety grant funds? It's just that they won't be, go to tax reduction?
Well, that's the issue. If the program itself says that and it's the governor's program, so unless there is some legal direction in that regard, then likely we would just reject the program outright and go back with the original L2.
Their governor, Brandy, dictated that in order for us to get this money, or any city to get this money, they had to be able to do that as property tax relief, or you didn't get it.
So in other states, they can just take that
Don't know what
money
other states are
and
doing. It's not relevant to us.
use it for their public safety salaries.
They may be able to. One of the Treasury regulations says that one of the, default things that you can use CARES Act monies for are the expenses of your public safety personnel, both EMS, police, fire, et cetera. So yeah, again, it's not without risk. The risk is that somehow it's declared invalid, and then the state says, well, you have to give the money back, or they will reduce our funding in the future to get it back. Again, that's not what we're getting out of the governor's office. So we're trying to advise the council as best we can, knowing that the safe route, and I know some cities are doing this, the safe route is to stay with your property tax levy, according to the state code, and not take advantage of this program. The issue is, if you want to give relief to your taxpayers, then that's not an option.
Okay, well, that being said, How do we want to move forward?
I guess I would comment on one other thing too, even one slight change that happened once we had all the valuation from the county is that the increment of $5.01 was actually lower than what we originally
Yes.
anticipated. So even without this, we were going to be having a year where everyone's taxes, their portion of the city levy was going to go down. So I just want to point that out.
Yeah, it was 533 before.
Right.
Okay.
All right, well, I don't see the motion here.
It is on your, yes, there you go.
It's on the second page, Brandy.
Someone else can go if they're ready. I move that we approve the fiscal year 2021 amended appropriations ordinance under suspension of the rules requiring 3 complete and separate readings, and that ordinance be read by title and published by summary. Is that where we are?
Second.
Second by Sandra. Okay, we have a motion by Brandy and a second by Sandra to approve the FY 2021 amended appropriations ordinance under the suspension of the rules requiring 3 complete and separate readings, and the ordinance be read by title and published by summary. I'll start to roll with Art. You got your hand up, Arthur.
Yeah, one question. Does that motion include holding off on the actual submission until at least the 8th of September or 9th?
We can do that in the L2. We got 2 actions here, Art.
Okay, so in that case, aye.
Ann,
Aye.
Maureen,
Aye.
Brandy,
Aye.
Gina,
Aye.
and Sandra.
Aye.
Okay. With that, I will read the amended ordinance number 2020-08, an ordinance replacing and superseding ordinance 2020-07 entitled Annual Appropriation Ordinance. This new ordinance is entitled Amended Annual Appropriation Ordinance, appropriating $96,133,513 for the purpose of defraying all necessary expenses and liabilities of the City of Moscow, Latah County, State of Idaho, for the 2021 fiscal year beginning the first day of October 2020 and ending the 30th day of September 2021, and allotting resources by fund for said appropriations for the objects and purposes set forth in this ordinance, levying ad valorem taxes in the amount of $7,420,688 for the 2021 fiscal year, providing that the provisions of this ordinance be deemed severable, providing for this ordinance to be in full force and effect from and after its passage, approval, and publication according to law. Okay, now we have action 2.
I move approval of the revised 2021 L2 property tax certification and authorize the mayor's signature and transmittal to Latah County.
Second.
Okay. And with that motion, I'm guessing you will go with the city supervisor's recommendation about sending there at the last possible moment in case we do have a change.
Yes.
Okay.
Assuming the last possible moment means no later than the 9th of September.
Yes,
Right.
it have to be, well, it's gotta be done by then, so. Okay, we got a motion by Brandy and a second by Sandra to approve the revised 2021 L2 property tax certification and authorize the mayor's signature and transmittal to Latah County. I will start to roll with Gina,
Aye.
Sandra,
Aye.
Brandy,
Aye.
Maureen,
Aye.
Ann,
Aye.
and Arthur.
Aye.
Okay. All right, that part of it is done.
Thank you.
Well, that's the end of our regular agenda tonight, but I thought it would be a good time because the last time we were so late here that I know councilors did have some reports, and so I'm going to ask for reports this evening. I'm going to start with you, Ann. Do you have anything to report?
I actually don't have anything tonight.
Okay, Arthur.
All of my reports start coming up tomorrow.
Okay, then I'll go to Gina.
I have one for you, sir.
Okay.
The Fair and Affordable Housing Commission met, And they're crafting a response slash collaborative letter for the housing study that was produced by PEP in the fall. They are, I believe, looking for a voice at the table with the leadership team, the regional housing leadership team, and looking to collaborate. I think that there will be some powerful recommendations coming out of the Housing Commission, and we'll be able to integrate them into this team as well. That's all.
Thank you. Sandra?
Yeah, I'd sort of forgotten about that, so my mind was racing. Thanks for not starting with me. I will say that planning and zoning has been meeting. I don't like to update too much because that's just like future things getting ready to happen here. So it's kind of like opening up a present early. But there are some things happening. It'll be fun to see where we go with those things. I'm happy to say that I went to the 1912 Center and met with Jenny and some of the other city crew, and the floors are getting done, and the lights are in. It looks like the ventilation's in, so there's a little bit of sprucing up to do, and they can do the final drywalling, and it's agonizingly close to being done, even though it doesn't quite look like it. We're really close. And then the Pathways Commission met, and on their big, they usually do September, I believe, is Bicycle Month. It probably has a fancier name than that, so I apologize to anyone watching on the Pathways Commission if I mess that up. But typically, they like to do a bicycle tour of Moscow, and they try to pick different routes that the pathways go on. And they had made a plan and then decided that with COVID, they were hoping that by September it'd be okay, but it's not. And so it's not going to be an invited city tour, but what they plan to do, the commission is going to go on the bike tour, and they're going to take pictures of things. And so they're going to try their hand at making a nice video about some of the different pathways. So I'm looking forward to that, and I appreciate the work that they put into to doing that as well.
Very good. Maureen?
The meeting with the volunteer fire department, their big issue is trying to determine how to do their fundraising drive, which is usually done in conjunction with the homecoming parade. And we're not sure this year whether or not there's going to be a big homecoming parade. So they're trying to figure out how to do that, and they're also trying to figure out how they would do it in light of COVID, and so whether or not they will ask the city to potentially close down streets from this main street from 6th to 7th, and then do takeout food so that everybody could go by and order ahead of time and pick up their food to go. Maybe a drive-through. They're not really quite sure. We're still waiting from the university. I called into the university today, and they still haven't made a decision about homecoming yet. So that is a question. So we'll keep you posted on that. The SEC, their big issues are trying to promote Moscow as a bee city. And also, there's a great climate report that's being worked on right now, and they're off for the month of August. So those can work on those assignments, but we're not having any more meetings in August. And the other one is the Human Rights Commission, and theirs is the letter that we all read about the gender-neutral bathrooms, and also creating as their issue, their theme for the coming year is intentionality.
Okay, Brandy?
The Tree Commission met, and discussion about Arbor Day. That is typically one of the requirements for Tree City USA certification, but that requirement is being waived this year. They are still planning on something small. I think typically there's the proclamation that the mayor gives the first meeting in October, and so there was discussion about just the commission planting a tree. They discussed locations and types of trees, but I don't want to promise anything in case they change their mind, but what they talked about sounds pretty great, but we'll see. They have a member, this is a good example of some of that overlap of commissions working together. They have one of their members that's going to be in that climate action subgroup that Maureen mentioned with SEC, and will be reporting back to the Tree Commission about how that proceeds. And they also discussed the downtown tree replacement plan, and David Schott from the city will be bringing a draft plan to the commission to discuss. The community has given feedback already that they prefer with the downtown trees for them to be replaced as they die. So, they'll be looking for drought-tolerant trees and David's quite the tree expert, so he'll be bringing that to the whole commission, and that'll be something to look forward to downtown.
The Arbor Day event that we always have in April, we missed that, of course, because of COVID, and I always enjoyed helping plant trees, and we usually have a bunch of kids with us helping us, and it's always a fun time, so I'll look forward when we can resume back to normal. And I don't have any reports, but I do have a few comments that I want to make to folks. I haven't had a chance to do this for a while, but you know what? Our city, we're inching forward. We're moving forward. We are making some progress in what we're doing. And I just want to take a minute to reflect and thank the people of this town that are doing the very best that they possibly can. This has been a bizarre year, 2020, that none of us will forget. And hope to God we'd never have to repeat it anywhere in the future. Clearly not in my lifetime. That'd be great. But we're moving along. We're working together. We're going to get some things done. And we've got some good things on the horizon coming and stuff, business things, different stuff that we are moving forward. And if we all do our part and just a little bit of responsibility, we're going to come out of this thing okay. Now, we got to work together to make it happen. I just want to thank the people of this city for the understanding, because with the 2020 COVID, 2019 COVID, it's just put everybody a little bit on edge. And as we move forward, we're going to get through this, folks, where it's going to happen for us, and so keep your spirits high. We're working together to get things done. Gary, do you have any reports, sir?
None, sir.
Well, with that, ladies and gentlemen, I'd ask for adjournment. It is 7:57. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
In a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Bye.
Opposed at 7:58. Thank you, everybody.